Hey friends, this is Derek Bros with the Conscious Resistance Network, theconsciousresistance.com, and today we're going to do a quick news wrap-up, news update. Since I've been on the road for the last 5 weeks, there's a few different stories that have caught my eye over the last month or so, and some that deserve their own video that I'll be doing in the coming week, but others are important, but maybe not deserving of their own video, so I figured I'd put them all together in a video package called In Case You Missed It, news wrap up. So that's what we're going to work on today. First, I want to remind you guys to bookmark theconsciousresistance.com, to scroll on down here to subscribe to our email newsletter. I send it out every Sunday now that I'm back home, and you can get the latest updates on projects that I have going on, including 5G organizing, a conference call for intentional communities, and much, much more. So you don't want to miss that. First off, let's start with talking about Facebook, which is everyone's favorite social media platform for some silly reason that people around the world, millions of people, continue to use despite the fact that Facebook spies on you, Facebook sells your data. Facebook leads to depression, leads to envy, leads to insecurity, and overall is just another way to get you addicted to that dopamine rush. So even if you think you're not taking drugs or you're not drinking alcohol, if you're using Facebook and some social media platforms, you're hooked in a different way. But this one is a couple of weeks old, February 18th, 2019 now, almost 3-4 weeks old now. From CNN, Russia is backing a viral video company aimed at American millennials. And it looks like the old bad guys are up to it again, telling people that anybody who's out there spreading news that goes against the American war empire must be funded by the Russians and must be Russian bots. So, according to CNN, 3 online video channels designed to appeal to millennials have collected tens of millions of views on Facebook since September. But the pages pushing the videos do not disclose that they are backed by the Russian government. The pages are run by Mafic Media, a company whose majority stakeholder is roughly a subsidiary of RT. Although Mafic Media has hired contractors and freelancers in Los Angeles in recent months, the company is not registered in the US. It is registered in Germany. And on Friday, which is a few weeks back, Facebook suspended the pages, saying that it would reach out to the people running them to ask that they disclose where the pages are run from and their affiliation with their parent company, and to get back to them. But basically, if you look at this, it's going after a couple different pages that this company owned, and they are back then Soapbox and Waste Ed about education, and they all take a particular stand that it was probably familiar to millennials who've seen like the Now This or AJ plus these kind of Facebook pages and social media content that are slickly edited, and they are usually just have text on screen, so you don't even have to listen to it if you're at work and you can't listen to it, or you're at school. And yeah, and they work very well. They go viral and people pay attention to them. So these 3 outlets who have some connections to RT, Margarita Simonian, the head of RT, pointed out that Facebook didn't seem to have an issue with the pages until CNN asked about them. All of a sudden, CNN made a big deal about it, talking about Russian interference. Facebook took them down. And this is basically the CNN hit piece here, saying that they're mimicking the Russian information operations in the U.S. over the past few years, trying to exploit existing divisions and tensions in the countries. But when you go on there and look at their pages, and you can see that it's clear that these pages are just calling out the U.S. BS, calling out the war machine, calling out U.S. colonialism and the U.S. empire. And the journalists themselves, as far as we can see, have no connection to the Kremlin or to Russia particularly. They've just been hired to work by them. And maybe that's the way that propaganda operates. Countries, governments fund small operations like this, and the people think that they're completely independent. They have enough room to speak. But ultimately, they're serving the larger aims of the people who are running the show. And that may be true. But at the end of the day, this is just more propaganda from the U.S. government and from Facebook. And thankfully, though, you can see this update just a couple days ago, how a small team of journalists overcame Facebook censorship. This is written by Alexander Rubinstein for Mint Press News. And it really goes deep, deep, deep into this story, looking at the people who are pushing some of this nonsense about being Russian bots, and the same people who are pushing the idea of myself and plenty of others being fake news. So CNN admitted in its article that it was tipped off by the German Marshall Fund to the fact that Mafic is owned by roughly an RT subsidiary by 51%. and by this other guy for 49%. Now, if you remember the German Marshall Fund, who I'm actually working on a mini documentary about, it's a think tank that's funded by the United States Agency for International Aid, International Development, USAID, and the German Marshall Fund, along with the Atlantic Council and along with Propernaut and some other shady organizations who have been calling everybody in the independent media fake news and who apparently have been working to take down independent news off social media, are a part of the same team that's going after these journalists now. And thankfully they were able to overcome that and they got their Facebook pages back. But still, I have to ask myself, why? Why are you guys using it? Obviously people are there, but why play their game? Why not just go somewhere else and build something better? Now, in addition to this Facebook news, we got this one here, which was originally put out by Project Veritas, and this is an update from Activist Post. Facebook insider leaks docs, explains deboosting, troll report, and political targeting and interview. And now I've seen Project Veritas do some good work. They tend to lean right, and so most of their exposing is just exposing the left. I haven't seen them do a lot of exposing of people on the right and the shady actions that they're up to. But still, for what they do good work. And this is definitely worth your time. They do a sit down with this interview with this employee, which, by the way, they call her an insider. It's like this chick shows her whole body and her hair dye colored pink, and they use her normal voice. So I don't know how well she's hiding herself, and if they even care to hide herself anymore. It's just probably to make it kind of look, intense, like, oh, we've got an insider, former Facebook worker. But I'm pretty sure Facebook and the NSA and whoever else wants to know knows who this lady is. But either way, props to her. She talks about how as she was working at Facebook, she started to notice that some of these same names were popping up. She was seeing deboosting, and of course, deboosting means the opposite of boosting. So if you want to boost somebody's live stream, maybe they pay for it or they boost it in some other way. A deboost would then mean to make sure that less people see it, so that it's deboosted from people's timelines and from their news feeds. And so this short interview actually shows this insider giving her take on what she discovered, and then James O'Keefe of Project Veritas actually going and trying to interview some of the Facebook employees who were responsible for creating the technology. So it's really great work, and it does show you that, look, Facebook, Twitter, all these outlets, they do have an agenda. They do have a bias. I don't want to believe, and I can't just believe based on what I see, that it's just a bias against conservatives or right-wingers. Yes, some of the companies probably have that just because they're liberal and left-wing, but you better believe that anybody who speaks out against the war machine is going to be censored and face deboosting and face shadow banning and things like that. So don't get caught into the whole false left-right paradigm again and thinking like, oh, it's just attacking right-wing and conservatives, and it's all the left-wing, it's all the liberals. That's just part of the propaganda too. All right, and on to the next story that you need to know about but might have missed. OPCW Syria report cripples Western chemical weapons narrative. This is being written by Tony Cartolucci, being posted on Activist Post. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons has presented its final report regarding an alleged chemical weapons attack on Douma, Syria, which supposedly took place on April 7, 2018. You guys must remember this one. If not, go back and check on our YouTube channel, on our website. You can search Syria and see the report that I did that thoroughly debunked this claim that there were chemical weapons being used, or at least showed that there were reasons to doubt the claims, let's say that. And despite attempts by the Western media to hail this as proof that the Syrian government used chemical weapons in Douma, the report says nothing of the sort. In fact, the report fails to link any of the alleged 43 deaths to apparent chlorine found at the scene. Claims of the attack were made by the US-backed militants on the eve of their defeat, and the initial reports claim that sarin or chlorine chemical bombs were deployed through the use of 2 yellow gas canisters modified as bombs. No sarin of any kind was found by the OPCW inspectors. Read that again. No sarin gas of any kind was found by the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons inspectors. And while the report suggests that 2 modified yellow gas canisters were used in the attack, and that they appeared to have been dropped onto 2 buildings, the report also mentions that the inspectors found a nearly identical canister in a workshop which was used by the militants to construct weapons. Now, those same militants are the people who, let's just call them, they're terrorists by any other name, who have been supported by the U.S. government and funded by the U.S. government over the years. So we have to remember those things. We have to remember that As the years pass, right? This has been it's been almost a year now since these claims of chemical weapons attacks, and most people have forgotten and moved on about it, but they assume what they were told by the Western media was true. They're like, yeah, Syria, chemical weapons. And then a year later, when a report says, hey, we're not so sure about that, most people have moved on. They're already cemented in their mind of what they think is reality, and reality seems to be different than what we were told. The alleged chemical weapons attack happened on April 7th, and this led to the US, UK, and France launching missiles against Syrian military targets on April 14th, 2018. And this was long before the inspectors even arrived at the sites. So the US claims there was an attack on April 7th. By April 14th, they're bombing along with the UK and France. And this is more than a week before the inspectors could actually get on site. And the OPCW report notes that video and photographic evidence of alleged victims of chemical exposure could not be linked to any chemical inducing traces of chlorine that they found. This is a specific quote from the report. Many of the signs and symptoms reported by the medical personnel, witnesses, and casualties, as well as those seen in multiple videos provided by the witnesses, their rapid onset and their large number of those reportedly affected indicate exposure to an inhalational irritant or toxic substance. However, based on the information reviewed and with the absence of biomedical samples from the dead bodies, it is not currently possible to precisely link the cause of the signs and the symptoms to a specific chemical. So, I mean, this is taking a more kind of tempered approach. It's not saying like, yes, Assad is a killer, chemical killer, and we have all the evidence. They're basically saying like, there's no way to have hard evidence of this. So, I don't know. And even further, the report says a number of the interviewed medical staff who were supposedly present in the emergency department on April 7th emphasized that the presentation of the casualties was not consistent with that expected from a chemical attack. They also report not having experience in the treatment of casualties of chemical weapons. Some interviewees stated that no odor emanated from the patients, while others witnesses declared that they perceived the smell of smoke on the patient's clothes. So you got a lot of mixed signals. And my point with bringing this up is you're not going to hear about this in the corporate mainstream media unless they try to spin it and say that, it favors their narrative. But the reality is that the narrative is much, much different. And all of these lies are just being used to push us further into war. A brief 5G update here. Now, I've talked about health concerns, security concerns, privacy concerns as it relates to 5G. But I've also mentioned this company, Huawei, which is one of the largest companies in China that is involved in telecom infrastructure. They're kind of like a Verizon or something like that in the sense that they are involved with cell phones, but they're also helping build the infrastructure for 5G. And I've mentioned to you guys that the United States government, who is fully aware that 5G cellular technology and the spectrum that 5G operates on, and of course moving to the Internet of Things, that allows anybody who has access to that to monitor, to spy, to gather up data, and to use it for all kinds of reasons. And so for this, the U.S. has pushed back against Huawei and said, hey, this is a Chinese company. They could theoretically use the infrastructure they install in America and all around the world to spy on all of us for the Chinese government. Huawei's chairman has denied any of this. The Chinese government denied any of this. And the U.S. government is pushing back and calling on their allies not to work with Huawei. And in a lawsuit now that Huawei has filed against the U.S. government, it will claim that the National Defense Authorization Act violates the U.S. Constitution by singling out an individual or group for punishment without trial, according to the reports. And the legislation, the most recent NDAA, which was passed back in August, specifically forbids government agencies from using technology from Huawei and its smaller Chinese rival ZTE. So this is kind of some of the behind the scenes stuff going on. Of course, we should be concerned about the privacy and the health concerns of how it's going to affect us when 5G rolls out in our communities in the United States. But the bigger picture, the larger kind of geopolitical battle that's taking place is that these two superpowers, the United States and China, are trying to battle over who is going to be in control of the infrastructure that will underpin all of the future technology, from driverless cars, augmented reality, virtual reality, to robot assistants, and obviously the spying and all that stuff. They want to make sure that they're the ones in control of that, and because they're also afraid that each other will use it to spy on the opposing country. And that's the reality of this technology. It can be used in so many different ways, and people are just turning a blind eye to it because they want speeds 100 times faster. Now, speaking of technology, let's take a look at this one really briefly. HoloLens. Some of you guys may have heard about this, right? HoloLens is made by Microsoft, and it's a tool that recently the United States military has announced that they are going to use. The U.S. Army signed a contract, a $479 million contract with Microsoft last year to supply technology for the military's Integrated Visual Augmentation System, or IVAS. Under the project, Microsoft, who makes the HoloLens augmented reality headset, and augmented reality is different than virtual reality. Augmented reality is like say you're wearing one of these headsets and you're looking around the world. You see the regular world that's there, but you'll also have a heads-up display, kind of like on a video game, that will tell you about your environment. And so these headsets are eventually there's going to be 10,000, 100,000 of them, which will be used in combat and training for the military. And the Army says that this project is, quote, a way to increase lethality by enhancing the ability to detect, decide, and engage before the enemy. And in response to this, a number of Microsoft workers have written a letter to top executives. This is just a couple of weeks old, but it's still going on. To CEO Satya Nadella and President Brad Smith, saying that they don't want a part of this. They don't want to be a part of the militarization of Microsoft technology that they're helping build. Quote, we are alarmed that Microsoft is working to provide weapons technology to the U.S. military, helping one country's government increase lethality using tools we built. We did not sign up to develop weapons, and we demand a say in how our work is used. But unfortunately, you have no say. That's kind of the thing, is if you're working as a cog in a bigger machine, like say Amazon, Microsoft, Google, whatever, you basically have no say. And that's kind of where it's at. And Microsoft has pushed back and basically said that, they thought long and hard about this, and ultimately they thought it was worth, helping out Microsoft. And he said basically that we appreciate feedback from employees and provide many avenues for their voices. In fact, we heard from many employees throughout the fall. As we said then, we're committed to providing our technology to the U.S. Department of Defense. As we also said, we'll remain engaged and an active corporate citizen in addressing the important ethical and public policy issues, blah, 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 blah. They're basically saying, we're not going to do anything about it. You can read the full letter here if you want to. They're calling on Microsoft to cancel the contract, cease developing any and all weapons technologies, appoint an independent ethics review board. Yeah, this shit ain't going to happen. Sorry to say, guys. But it does show you that some people out there actually got a little bit of courage, got a little bit of backbone. Now we'll see if any of them actually quit their jobs. You know what I mean? It's a one step to talk big and say, we don't like what Amazon's doing. We don't like what Google's doing and things like that. But it's a whole nother to say, I'm not going to benefit from it anymore. I'm going to step away and I'm not going to participate. That's what it actually takes if you want to be a principled person, and it's scary for many of us. Now let's move into the last couple stories here. Health, vaccines. This is going to end up being its own video separately, but I just wanted to bring it up to your attention in case you missed this, because we're only 3 months into 2019, and I've never seen this much propaganda for forcing vaccines on people. Of course, there's been a couple of measles outbreak, and that's being used by the media to ramp up this idea that if we don't force people to vaccinate, these crazy anti-vaxxers, these crazy people who want freedom and choice, are going to have us all killed and get us all sick. Just last Tuesday, the Senate Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions did a hearing called Vaccine Saves Lives. Vaccines Save Lives, What is Driving Preventable Disease Outbreaks? And they had all these different people come talk, including Ethan Lindenberg, who is a student who, if you guys hadn't seen, this is the kid that he posted on Reddit. It supposedly was, an organic thing. He did it all on his own. This is not some media ploy. I have trouble buying that. But he posted on Reddit saying that, hey, I'm 18 years old. My mom's a crazy anti-vaxxer. I went and got vaccines without her permission. And now he's a hero of the pro-vaccine community, the anti-vaxxer community. And they're parading him around, including at this congressional hearing. And at this congressional hearing, this committee hearing, we have Rand Paul being essentially the only person who stood up and spoke against forced vaccinations. You can see this headline, GOP senator defends mandatory vaccinations after Rand Paul says they're inconsistent with liberty. A Republican senator forcefully defended mandatory vaccinations Tuesday after his Republican colleague, Senator Rand Paul, blasted national vaccine requirements as a danger to liberty. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana This guy should be fired immediately because he obviously doesn't understand anything about freedom or liberty. Said that vaccines are a key public health safeguard, and he says basically that people should be forced to vaccinate. As we contemplate, this is what Rand Paul said, as we contemplate forcing parents to choose this or that vaccine, I think it's important to remember that force is not consistent with the American story, nor is force consistent with the liberty our forefathers sought when they came to America. And he said, I don't think you have to have one or the other, though. I'm not here to say don't vaccinate your kids. If this hearing is for persuasion, I'm all for the persuasion. I've vaccinated myself. I've vaccinated my kids. He said, but I still do not favor giving up liberty for a false sense of security. Cassidy fired back, the Republican from Louisiana, said this requirement is just that you cannot enter school unless you're vaccinated. Now, if you're such a believer in liberty that you do not wish to be vaccinated, then there should be a consequence, and that is that you cannot infect other people. If you believe in liberty, that's fine. Don't get immunized. But I don't think you need to necessarily expose others to the disease. So they start with saying that you can't get into schools, right? And then your kids can't get into daycare. Do you think they're going to stop there? Eventually, they're going to say, you can't go out in public. You can't go out to the public parks. You can't go out. You're going to have to wear an X on your shirt if you're unvaccinated. I mean, this is just getting really scary and crazy. And like I said, I'm going to have a bigger video coming on this soon. I just wanted to touch on it in case you hadn't seen, because there's so much propaganda coming out related to vaccines. And it really needs to be called into question. This one here, again, I'm going to be doing a separate video on, but I just want to tease it a little bit. In case you didn't see this, it's kind of related to football, but also prostitution, maybe some bigger issues. Patriots owner Robert Kraft charged with misdemeanor solicitation of prostitution. Robert Kraft, who's a billionaire owner of the New England Patriots, faces charges of soliciting a prostitute after he was twice videotaped in a sex act at a shopping center massage parlor in Florida. The 77-year-old man is denied any wrongdoing, and this comes amid a crackdown on sex trafficking from Palm Beach to Orlando, in which police planted cameras in massage parlors. Kraft was not immediately arrested. They said that there will be a warrant issued for his arrest. I doubt this guy's going to go to prison, and we'll have to wait and see what the real charges are. But the one thing that really caught my attention, and again, I'm doing some deeper digging into this that I think will be worth looking at. Robert Kraft, lives in Massachusetts and has a home in the Palm Beach area. Some of you may remember why that's significant. And though he is a Democrat, he is friendly with President Donald Trump and a frequent guest at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. This same Mar-a-Lago club in the same Palm Beach area is where Jeffrey Epstein has lived and where Jeffrey Epstein was recruiting his women, these various women. So Trump says, oh, it's very sad. I'm surprised to see it. He's proclaimed his innocence. And they're denying any involvement. But as I said, I think that there might be some more digging worth doing when you see that Trump connection, the Palm Beach connection, the Mar-a-Lago connection. Maybe there's an Epstein connection. I'm going to do some more digging, but we'll have to wait on that. And the last thing I want to mention to you guys is actually a positive story. I think so. It's something that we can say, hey, here's something good happened. Jaden Smith unveils infiltration system to provide Flint with clean water. Jaden Smith is, of course, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith's 20-year-old son. He's a rapper. He's an actor. He's done a lot of different things. And he's also the founder of a company called Just Goods, which says that they sell, quote, ethically sourced and bottled water. And they've teamed up with the First Trinity Missionary Baptist Church in the Flint area. And they created something called the Water Box, which will be set up at church on Thursdays from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. and is capable of providing 8 to 10 gallons of water per minute after running through 3 different filters. And there's some pictures you can see of them getting this water box set up, and he's providing people, the church through help with Jaden Smith has provided about 5 million bottles of water to Flint, but has seen declining donations as the city nears its 5th year of water crisis. Yes, Flint still has dirty water, still has poison in the water, just like Houston, just like many other places, but they've been doing it for quite some time, and most of them have been ignored. Jaden Smith says it was a community that people were talking about and donating, and everybody was paying attention, and then slowly they started to dwindle away, but the problem didn't go away. In addition to working with the church, Smith's company also collaborates with nonprofit organizations like Black Millennials for Flint, Rethink H2O, The Last Kilometer, and Smith's own 501c3 foundation. So yeah, here he is, helping people out. Just a little bit of a good news story, shows you that we don't have to rely on the government to fix things. I think a while back Elon Musk was even helping out as well. And it shows you that people who have a little bit of money and influence can use that money for good if they choose to. So yeah, just think about that one. And that's it for today, guys. I just wanted to share those stories with you, help myself clear out some of the tabs I have on my browser that I've been waiting to share with you guys and catch you up on. And I hope you will share the individual stories. All the link will be below the video description. And I have lots more videos coming out in the coming weeks. So please stay subscribed, follow, like, and share. And if you want to support us to make sure that we can keep doing this, you can send crypto, you can send PayPal, or you can sign up for a monthly support on patreon.com/DerekBros. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free, my friends. Peace.